Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Testing. Testing, testing. 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 I was going to say, will the mics work once everything's turned on, or are they supposed to start now? Okay, perfect. I was like, wait, it's not working. Okay, I wanted to make sure. Yeah, I'm just going to give everyone a warning to kind of get in, settle down. Thank you. Yeah, and then I'll just get it. All right, I'm just going to have everyone. Do you want to sit up towards the front, like on the speaker? I'll just come sit by you. Okay. Good morning, everyone. As you guys are filing in, make sure, take a seat. We're going to start in about 5 minutes. So if you guys can just make sure, scan that digital QR code that's inside your bag. That's just going to give you all the information for today. But if you haven't already, make sure to go grab a drink, grab some food. But we're going to start in about 5 minutes. So excited that all of you should join us this morning to learn how to embrace visionary leadership, to learn how to embrace successes and failures and the path and courage that it takes to become visionaries. With that being said, before getting started, on behalf of the Honors College, we have a few special people who will be today to help us out on this event. Starting with the Leadership and Action Fellowship with the Honors College. How are you? Hi. I just realized you were there. Hi. You're fine. You look really cute. I was like looking at this and was like, that's adorable. I was like, I love it.
Amazon. It was like 15.
You're gonna have to send me the link, girl. I was like, that's cute.
So I was like, I have no business there.
I know. I told my roommate, I was like, girl, I have the same black tank top, pants from high school, and blazer. I was like, I need to spice it up. So I literally got a white one. I was like, that's spicing it.
It looks so good.
Thanks. I was like, that's it. Yeah, that's all I got. No.
You're gonna kill it. Wait, how much do you have to say?
Just this.
Okay.
And then after that, I'll invite Merritt up. She'll introduce John. And then from there, the main thing after that is just like the breakout and then the panel. I'll do that. I'll moderate that. So just ask the questions.
Finding the crowd.
I know. I'll probably look at you. Like,
Yeah, I'm like over there.
Yay. Okay, good.
Okay.
That's good to know. I'll make eye contact.
Okay.
I'm like my safe person.
Yeah.
You're so sweet.
Good luck.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing? That's what I like to hear on a Saturday morning. How are you guys doing, though? Amazing. Well, we are so excited that all of you are here today. If you haven't, please take a seat. Scan that digital QR code if you haven't already. But I'm so excited to introduce to you guys today the theme and just overall what we're going to be doing today for the 2025 Next Generation Leadership Conference, the Visionary Summit. My name is Emma Cruz-Weisner, and I have the honor of being your guys' host this morning. A little bit about the conference. We are so excited today to talk about what it takes to be visionary, what it takes to be an amazing leader, how to embrace the successes and failures along the way in the path that takes grit, strength, and perseverance. With that being said, before getting started, on behalf of the Honors College and everyone who helped make today's event possible, I wanted to thank a few people. First, starting off with the entire Leadership in Action Fellowship, as well as Dr. Bree, Dr. Merritt, Kendall Smith, Anya Confrancesco, and Makai Kabasa. We also would like to give a big thank you to today's sponsors, GCU Honors, Alpha Chi, as well as Northern Trust. So if you guys haven't, make sure to get your notebooks out. And without further ado, I have the honor to introduce Dr. Merritt Hahn, our program director at the Honors College, to introduce our keynote speaker for today.
All right, good morning, everybody. Yay, you guys are actually really awake for Saturday. That's so awesome. We're so excited you're here. Thank you for giving up a Saturday to come and learn about leadership, about professionalism, and take this opportunity to really grow. We're so excited that you're here. We're so excited for this event that we've put together. And honestly, our Leadership in Action Fellowship, if you're not familiar with it, it's about 50 of our top honor students working on professional and leadership development throughout the year, and they deliver our signature programs like this one. And so I'd like to give a special shout out to Kaylee and Ainsley, our directors, who put this whole thing together. They started working on this last spring. Woo! Yes, there they are. Woo-woo! So they earned their positions last spring. They literally came to me and said, how do we get started now? So I cannot thank you enough. This has been basically a year in the making. So we're so excited that you're here. So thank you for being here. And we're looking forward to the day. I have the honor of introducing our keynote speaker, and normally I try not to use a cheat sheet, but his background and his expertise is so impressive that I don't want to get it wrong. So here we go. Don't mind me. I'm going to read. John Iannarelli spent 20 years as an FBI special agent, during which time he was a member of the FBI SWAT team and participated in numerous high-profile cases to include the Oklahoma City bombing, the 9/11 attack, the shooting of Congresswoman Giffords, and the Sony hack. John was the FBI's national spokesperson and held key leadership positions to include serving on the FBI headquarters Cyber Division executive staff and was assistant special agent in charge directing all criminal, cyber, and counterintelligence investigations. He was also awarded an honorary Doctor of Computer Science for his contributions to the field of cyber investigations. John is a former police officer, attorney, and after retiring from the FBI was an NFL security representative responsible for overseeing the security of players, fans, and stadiums throughout the NFL season and the Super Bowl. John has presented throughout the world, speaking to Fortune 500 companies, the United Nations, and even the Vatican, where he has personally met on several occasions with Pope Francis. John is the author of 5 books and a national television news on-air law enforcement contributor who reported live from the Las Vegas shooting at Mandalay Bay as it was happening. Please welcome John Iannarelli.
Thank you very much. Pleasure. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you for having me here today. It is an honor for me to be with you and be able to talk a little bit about leadership. Thank you for the warm introduction. I will tell you, in the FBI, and I ran the FBI office here in Arizona before I retired. I had some great experiences in the FBI, major cases that I was fortunate enough to work, a lot of significant terrorism matters, very important stuff. Do we have football fans here today? Anybody a football fan? All right, I see some hands, good. I leave the FBI to go to work for the NFL, and responsibilities change. my most important responsibility in the NFL, and I swear to God I'm not making this up, was to check the air pressure in the footballs to make sure they were properly inflated on game day. So it was a silly, ridiculous thing. I used to call it the Patriot Act because it was all because of the Patriots when I got started. But with that said, my roles have evolved over time. I'm now, for our true football fans, I'm with the Kansas City Chiefs. And didn't go as well as we would have liked, but nevertheless, we'll be back next year. With that all said, we're going to talk a little bit about leadership. And the way I'm going to do it today is I'm going to go through some FBI cases. Some you're probably going to know. They've been on the news, etc. Some not as familiar, but right here from Arizona. And what I want to talk about is what's the leadership lesson we get in those cases that are important for agents, but also important to everybody else. You can take a lesson away and apply it to the private sector. With that, we'll start off with a little quick video, if my clicker's working here. Do you mind? We're having technical problems already. So if you can, you want to advance the slide for the next thing? Thank you.
Dad, guess which is it? Is it NBA or NFL? 36 have been accused of spousal abuse. 7 have been arrested for fraud. 19 have been accused of writing bad checks. 117 have directly or indirectly been bankrupted at least 2 businesses. 3 have done time for assault. 71, I repeat, 71 cannot get a credit card due to their bad credit. 14 have been arrested on drug-related charges. 8 have been arrested for shoplifting. 21 currently are defendants in lawsuits, and 84 have been arrested for drunk driving in the last year. How many of you think NBA? How many of you think NFL? Well, the answer is neither. It's the 435 members of the United States Congress.
All right, well, you got that to look forward to. So vote early and vote often. So, all right. I'm sorry, folks. This is not working here. So there we go. Leadership. How do we define leadership? Well, basically, it's the values, the actions, all the things that you're going to do as a leader that's going to demonstrate how you want your organization to operate. Leadership is essential. You probably know that already. It's very important to you. But in the work world, you don't see it all the time. And that's why companies flounder. That's why people fail, don't achieve success. It's imperative that we have strong leadership. And leadership is not something you're born with. I hear that a lot. Oh, they're born leaders. Well, that's great if you are, but it's developed. It can be developed through experiences. Everything I learned as a leader, I learned from having good leaders to emulate. And that's part of what you hope to take in your career. Not everybody is going to be a strong leader, however. Guys, you're just going to have to forward these for me since it's not working. Next slide. So, manager, very important. They are task focused. They have to make sure that the job is getting done. But as a leader, you got to be people focused. I see a lot of people who give directives and try to get people to do the job, not concerned with the carnage they create because they're not treating people well. You got to remember, you need your people again tomorrow and tomorrow. Not to mention, it's just the right thing to do, to nourish and encourage people to do a good job. You have to have both of these skills if you're going to be able to have people who are strong leaders. Now, in our next slide, you'll see that there's a lot of headlines out there of people who weren't good leaders. For those of you who don't recognize this guy, Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff wound up going to prison for the rest of his life, died in prison just within the past year, but he was a big deal on Wall Street. Bernie Madoff was basically running investments, and he was supposedly this genius that was making like 40% returns for people on their money. Well, the truth is, Madoff wasn't anybody special. He was a con artist. He was taking people's money and running what's called a Ponzi scheme, that you invest with me, and then I have somebody else invest, and I take their money and I pay it to you to make it look like your investment's done so well. And he kept doing that, and eventually it all collapsed. He ran out of money. Everybody lost their investments. And we had a lot of people that lost everything, that were millionaires to begin with. But I interviewed people who were in their 80s that had invested their life savings only to have to go back to work. Your grandparents' age, where that's it, they've lost everything because this guy had this ego, pretended to be a leader, but he wasn't really. As bad as Bernie Madoff is, Bill Cosby, a lot of you may recognize him. He had television shows for decades. Everybody saw him as America's dad, and yet he was accused of all these various crimes that he committed. He was actually convicted, but the sentence was overturned on a legal issue, but the facts remained the same. They didn't try him again because of his age, but here he was, a leader, especially in the African-American community, and yet all of that was gone because he did these terrible assaults on women, etc., all for his own personal gain. He forfeited his leadership, and he hurt a lot of people in the process. Moving along to the next one. This person here ran a company called Theranos. And Theranos was supposed to be the next big science. You know, like when you go into, say, a CVS or a Walmart, they have machines that will take your blood pressure. She developed, allegedly, a science where a simple pinprick, you can do it at any drugstore, take a sample of your blood, and it would tell you whether or not you had certain diseases, what kind of treatment you needed to receive, or if you were perfectly healthy. She got billions of dollars of investments to make this operation run, and yet the problem was, it was all a lie. She falsified records and medical testing just to be able to carry off this scam. Aside from the billions of dollars that were lost, a lot of people were receiving treatments for illnesses they didn't actually have. Even worse, people had real illnesses such as cancers, etc., that they were told they were perfectly healthy, so they avoided treatment. Again, she was allegedly a leader in the scientific community, but she was faking it all so that she can get away with this and be the big popular person, forfeiting what leadership is all about. Next slide. Who knows this one? Full House, right, etc. So she was part of this whole scandal where people were faking their entrance to get into college, pretending their kids were involved in sports, literally photoshopping photos of them playing sports, etc. There was a guy behind all this, but she was the most notable. You know, the only good news here is if they have a made-for-TV movie, she can play herself someday, where they'll talk about this case. But yet, how would you like to be her daughters that went to college and everybody knows you didn't earn it? Meanwhile, they also took spots away from students who did deserve those scholarships. And it wasn't just them, it was a lot of people across the country, all because of poor leadership, not doing the right thing, not having people earn their way into school, but rather faking it all so that they can go out and get an education at someone else's expense. And then finally, we've probably seen this guy before, Sam Brinkman-Fried. He was another person who allegedly was a financial genius. He was getting all these investments, and in the billions of dollars, bank loans, etc., he was donating a lot of money to politicians, to certain charities, doing all the right things so that nobody was taking a hard look at him. But again, it was another scam. He was just after the money and the lifestyle. His girlfriend, who was the chief financial officer of his company, when the FBI interviewed her, she told us, well, I'm not really good with numbers. Just as a general rule, if you're the chief financial officer, one would think you'd be pretty good with numbers. We call that a clue in my profession. Again, billions of dollars were lost, and who paid for all that? Well, believe it or not, you guys did. It's all coming out of tax dollars. The banks are federally insured. It's going to take a couple of decades to pay the money back. So as you pay taxes in the future, it's going to go towards some of this, that it was money he spent and gave away, lavish lifestyle, etc., all because he pretended to be a leader, but he wasn't. All right, finally, one last story. This is a leadership fail from the FBI. Now, we don't fail very often. We're pretty good at what we do, We take a lot of time to train our leaders to make sure they're up to the challenge. But every so often, something happens. And when it does, we deal with it. But it's not our proudest moment. So in the FBI, we're broken up into squads, a certain number of agents assigned to a violation that will conduct investigations, and there's a supervisor over these agents. In New York City, our flagship office, we had a terrorism squad, which was the squad to be on. They were working the biggest cases, the most exciting work. People fought to be on this squad. Problem is, the squad had one person more than allowable. Our numbers are set by Congress. We can't have more, we can't have less. So somebody had to leave the squad. Unfortunately, the supervisor wasn't being a leader. He was afraid to make a decision, decide who should come off the squad. He wanted to be popular. Now, being popular is great. I mean, I want to be liked as much as everybody else, but as a leader, it's more important to me to do the job and hopefully be respected. I knew people didn't necessarily like me all the time. That's fine. I've got enough friends in life. I'm trying to get rid of some of them. So I wasn't worried about being liked, but this guy was. So instead of making an executive decision who's going to come off the squad, he called everybody into the conference room and decided to reenact Survivor. You've all seen the show Survivor? Well, what he did was he had everybody around the conference table on the squad cast a secret ballot for who should be voted off the squad. And he collected the ballots. And if that wasn't bad enough, he then proceeded to read the ballots. And so people on the squad are hearing various names. It wasn't all just for one person. So this tight-knit, hardworking squad was now in chaos because people are like, well, who voted for me? And why do you want me off the squad? The person voted off, filed a lawsuit for discrimination. It was a mess. We wound up having to dismantle the squad, reassign agents to other squad. This one tight-knit squad that did great work was no more, all because of failed leadership. Now, fortunately, that's one out of literally thousands of squads in the FBI, but it still has a ripple effect, and that's why we're going to talk about the importance of leadership today. So, why aren't people leaders? I've got a couple of reasons up here. First of all, a lot of people lack the self-confidence. I mean, you have to be able to stand up in front of people and make decisions. Some people lack problem solving too. They just don't know how to figure out problems. Let me tell you, being a leader is all about problems. It's not about when things go well. It's when things are not going well. Part of that is nothing that goes bad is really expected. When a bank's robbed, I didn't know that was going to happen that day, but I responded to it. When a terrorism act happened, I was able to respond to it. You've got to be able to deal with unexpected events, not necessarily anticipate them all the time, but have the confidence to address them. People don't like conflict for the most part. I don't like conflict, but I'm not afraid of it. I don't go looking for it, but as a leader, you can't be afraid to embrace it and address conflict head on. Some people want to be a leader because they like the attention. Yeah, there's certain benefits with being a leader, and likewise, those benefits in my profession. I made a little more money. I got a better car, a nicer office. Great stuff, but not the reason to be a leader. You want to be a leader for the important things. So, jumping into this, you may not remember this case. It's going to be before your time, but I'm going to explain really quickly. Enron. Enron was a large utility company. They were publicly traded. You could buy stock in Enron. And a lot of people invested money. Enron was so big, it was one of the 7th largest economies in the world because of the amount of money this company handled, based out of Houston. Well, that's the Enron sign. It's sitting in the FBI basement in Houston. If anybody wants to buy it, it's still for sale because the company is no more. Next slide, please. Andy Fastow, he was involved in Enron, and if you click again, you'll see Andy Fastow had said a couple of things. He talked about, hey, we're a publicly traded company, but we're going to make up our success. We're going to tell people we've been very profitable, whether we aren't or not. And he even goes on to say that, in fact, is stealing. He knew it was stealing. He was a leader, but he didn't care. The next person involved in the company, well, Ken Rice, very similar. He basically said, yeah, we were told early on every month how our stock was going to do, and then we would just tell everybody that's what the stock did. People were making money off the stock, but it was all phony because the business was not supporting it. The next person, she's the only honorable person in this whole operation. Wanda was the head accountant for Enron. I've got some accounting people in here. Wanda was fired from Enron prior to the collapse because she could not make aggressive accounting decisions. Now, for my accountants in here, can anybody tell me what an aggressive accounting decision is? They're basically saying she would not lie. She would not fudge the numbers. She was a true leader. And then finally, the overall boss of the company was Ken Lay. Ken Lay had a sign in his office that said, rules matter, but not always. And think about that. Either rules matter or they don't matter. When it comes to rules, I always look at the spirit of the rule instead of the letter. The rule may say do this, but the spirit should be about supporting people, helping them move forward, but not straying from the importance of the rule. Ken didn't care just as long as he made money. That's why Enron is no more. The whole company went under. We indicted 35 officers in Enron, and of the 35, 31 were convicted. The other 4 pled guilty and still went to prison. Now, they lost a lot of money, and we were able to seize $168 million in assets, which sounds great until you realize they lost $74 billion. That's money that were people's life savings, their retirements, etc., all gone. Arthur Andersen, the major accounting firm in this country, is no more. Just a few accountants out of the 10,000 with Arthur Andersen were helping Enron cook the books. It destroyed their business reputation. Just a handful of people not doing the right thing, the company went under. How would you like to be leaving here with Enron or Arthur Andersen on your resume? It hurting these people for the rest of their lives. So with that, let's talk about some cases from the FBI and some of the positive lessons that we take from these cases. So, very first slide, the question is, what's your mission? Every company you go to work for is going to have a mission statement. I'm sure GCU has a mission statement. The FBI were fidelity, bravery, integrity. That is our official mission statement. But this guy here, I arrested right here in the Valley a guy that was involved in human trafficking. He essentially was a pimp. He was recruiting runaway girls, trying to entice them to go into his profession, and he could be very convincing. He could also be violent. Not a good person. He had a written business plan when we searched his house. And these are some of the excerpts from the business plan. So he talked about getting more girls so he doesn't go broke. He understood what his commodity was and what he wanted to do. He likewise talked about getting money so he could not go to jail, that he understood he was the boss and that how important it was. He knew that it was a one-man team and he was in charge. The lesson here, have a plan, okay? I think we could all be more like this pimp. If a pimp can take the time to write down on paper what his plan is, as you leave college, make sure you're putting on paper what you want to do. I've talked to some of you today and what you want to do in your dreams. Put it on paper. If you put it on paper, it's real. It won't disappear. That's leadership. You think about it, it's a dream. You put it on paper, it becomes a goal. Have a plan. Now, this guy is doing 20 years. I don't recommend his plan, but nevertheless, have a plan if he can do it. All right, this is before your time, the Oklahoma City bombing. This was a case involving a terrorist attack on U.S. soil. This case is why you can't park anywhere, literally. There was a time where you could pull up in front of any building, anywhere, park right there. This guy was angry with the U.S. government. He got a truck and he loaded it with explosives and parked right in front of the building and blew the building up. That's why the world's changed. We have bowards everywhere to prevent us from going anything and parking anywhere. But in this case, this individual actually worked with folks right here in Arizona to plan the bombing. They sat at a table right here in Arizona in their kitchen, put together the plan, built this bomb, all because he just didn't like the US government and wanted to lash out. He traveled around the country looking for a location to target, and the reason he targeted this building was because of all the federal buildings he looked at, this one had a daycare center in it. And he took a lesson from terrorism. In the terrorist world, if a terrorist hurts us, we don't like it, it concerns us, but we move on. They hurt our children, that really affects us, and that's what he wanted to do. So I'm working for the FBI, I get a phone call, this bombing has happened. Next thing you know, I'm one of 1,400 agents that are pulled together to work this case. We are sent to Oklahoma and elsewhere to be involved. Of the 1,400 agents, there's only 10,000 agents in the FBI. I was thrown into this case for 3 years. For 3 years, I'm working with people I've never met before. We wound up covering what we call a lead. Every time somebody calls in the FBI with information of a lead, we had 43,000 leads we had to cover and conduct interviews. We took 250,000 photographs documenting the evidence from the crime scene. We were looking for anybody else affiliated with this guy. We had searched over 1 billion records, checking for all his known associates. The hours were enormous. The cost was close to $1 billion in losses and investigative time. All of this just to bring this individual to justice. And how did it happen? Well, next click, please. Teamwork. We didn't know each other. The agents thrown into this case were at a moment's notice, pack your bag and go, and next thing you know, while you get home once in a while, you're spending 3 years working with people who had been strangers. But we came together for a common mission. In leadership, in the business world, you have to promote teamwork. It's how you accomplish things and get people to work together. Focus on teamwork and you will achieve success. All right, a lot of kidnappings in the FBI. I've worked my share over the course of my time. We still have a certain number of kidnappings. Most of them are drug-related. Somebody's working for the cartel. They get caught by the cops and they have to drop their load of drugs. The cartel wants their money back, so they may kidnap somebody and hold them until you pay. But we still have about 50 stranger abduction kidnappings of children every year. It's not a huge number, but it's a significant number. This is one such case. Now, in the FBI, we don't close a case until it's fully resolved. We have to have a positive resolution, be able to arrest somebody, or show that person's no longer alive, whatever it takes so that the case is officially complete. This was a story of a 4-year-old girl who was playing on the front lawn of her home and then went missing. The cops were called in, they looked, they couldn't find her, they contacted the FBI. We come in, set up a command post. We're on site for like 30 days working every possible lead, those pieces of information I talked about, to no avail. No sign of the child. The case starts winding down, but again, not closed. The case agent's in charge. He does something every single month that's required by our policy to leave no case unaddressed, no matter what, to try to make a contribution to solve the case. Years go by. I transfer to the office where this case is out of. That case agent's transferring out, so the case gets reassigned to me. I take a fresh look at the case, and believe me, I'm no investigative genius. It just happened to be a time where there was some new technology. And what we did was we took pictures of the 4-year-old girl, and we got pictures of her parents of what the parents looked like at age 13, because 9 years had gone by, the girl would be 13 if she were still alive. Through the computer program, we were able to get age-enhanced photographs depicting what the child should look like. And then the TV show, I don't know if you remember America's Most Wanted. It was still on the air. We got it profiled on America's Most Wanted. Once again, we get a bunch of leads out of this. Most of the leads were nonsense, nothing that really worked for us. But there was one lead that had some great promise. And I'm not going to bore you with all the technical details and what we did. But at the end of the day, 9 years later, we were able to find the girl still alive, and we were able to arrest the person that kidnapped her. It turns out it was somebody who had wanted a child and they saw an opportunity. They lived a couple of states over. So when they grabbed this child and then they drove off, nobody was looking in another state for this missing child. How did we solve this case? Well, hard work and persistence. We didn't give up. We worked it to its fruition. And that's the big secret in leadership. There's very little you can't accomplish if you use hard work and you persist and don't give up. If you want to achieve it, it may take time, but if you stick with it long enough, it's going to happen. For this, it brought resolution to the family. They were reunited with their child. The child didn't remember her parents. It was a lot of work for social workers and psychologists, but our job was to solve the problem and to take a criminal who committed a horrible crime and get that person off the street. Hard work and persistence. All right. Anybody know who this guy is? All right, I hear Elvis from some people. So in the FBI, every agent has to work an informant. You need people to give us information. And informants aren't necessarily bad people. A lot of times they're great citizens that just want to help out the community and they have information on something, they come forward. But he's not one of those guys. He was a criminal. I arrested this guy for a minor crime, and he wound up telling me about something bigger, and he wanted to work with me to try to bring his sentence down, get a better judgment by the judge, and hopefully not do a lot of time. Every informant in the FBI has a code name. We don't call them by their regular names to anybody else because we want to protect their identities. My informant was codenamed Elvis, and he was codenamed Elvis because he looked a lot like Elvis Presley, not the young, good-looking Elvis Presley, the later in life, peanut butter and banana sandwich Elvis Presley. So anyway, Elvis is telling me that he works for a pawn shop, but the entire pawn shop is a front, that all they're doing is dealing in stolen merchandise. And what they have is employees at the pawn shop that are really criminals. They're going out and they're breaking into businesses at night. They're robbing the homes when people are away, stealing property, bringing it into the pawn shop, and then selling it. And of course, they're making 100% profit because they haven't paid for any items to come into the pawn shop. So Elvis gives this up to us and tells us he can set it up. They all come in on a given day. So we decided a sting operation. I got about 20 agents. We are geared up, ready to go in. We're going to make arrests on this day, including arresting Elvis. That way it looks like he's not part of this. What we did was we had a SWAT team on standby nearby the store because they deal in guns, so we're worried about violence. I have Elvis wired up for sound. He's wearing a transmitter. I'm parked about a block away. I can see the store, but I'm concealed, so they can't see me. Elvis is going to walk into the store. He has his transmitter. I've got a recorder in the car. I'm going to capture everything, and when we hear the deals going down, we're going to move in and make our arrests. So Elvis gets out of my car. He starts walking towards the store, and I can hear him on his microphone. Check, 1, 2, 3. Everything sounds good. People had been pulling up. I saw cars coming, guys taking boxes out of the trunk and walking into the store. Elvis walks in the store. I hear him say hello to everyone, and then it goes silent. I don't hear anything else. For the next hour, people are coming and going from the store. We don't hear anything. I'm watching people walk out of the store, having walked in with boxes, and now they're walking out literally counting cash. So I know the deals are going down, but I can't prove anything. After about an hour, the last car leaves. Elvis comes out of the store, starts walking back towards me, and I can hear him again. He's whistling, he's all smiles, gets to my car, gives me a big thumbs up because he thinks it's all worked well. He gets in the car, and before he says anything, I'm like, Elvis, I'm really sorry. Of all days, we apparently had an equipment malfunction. I could not hear anything. Elvis looks at me and says, well, you couldn't hear anything because we weren't talking. I'm like, what do you mean you weren't talking? And Elvis said, and by the way, I don't know if I mentioned, Elvis clearly had been dropped as a baby. He was not the smartest guy around. Elvis says to me, I'm thinking the FBI's listening. I wonder who else might be listening. So I shushed everybody after saying hello and said, somebody could be listening. Instead, we wrote notes back and forth for the next hour. And I'm like, Elvis, you know who was listening? I was listening. That was the whole point of this assignment. Whose fault is this? 20 agents wasted their time, the SWAT team, not to mention the people who had been victimized, lost all their property. It was my fault because I knew who I was dealing with. He was not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I didn't make myself clear. If you're going to be a leader, you have to be able to communicate. You have to think of who you're talking to. Every generation communicates differently. Your generation communicates in a way very differently than my generation, and everywhere in between. As a leader, it's important for you to recognize that and make sure you understand how the people you're working with choose to communicate and hear best. And by the way, even within your generation, you're going to have people who are very outgoing that can make chit-chat. You're going to have people that are very stoic and mindset where they just want facts. They don't want to talk. You have to tailor the way you communicate as a leader. We went back another day, set it all up again. We're successful the next time around because I was far more explicit. Speak loudly so we can record you. And it all worked out down the road. But communication as a leader is imperative. Next slide. All right, 9/11, while you were very, very young, you're all familiar with 9/11 at least. So 9/11, major terrorist attack, changed the way we do everything in the world for that matter, but specifically in the FBI. On 9/10, I was a criminal investigator. My job was to go out and do investigations, build a case, arrest people, bring them to justice. On 9/12, I'm now looking to prevent the next terrorist attack. We have 10,000 agents in the FBI that had to pivot within 24 hours. None of us signed up to be analytics, analyze facts, try to predict and prevent things. No one's getting arrested for something that's prevented. There's a lot of things happening in the terrorism world that you never hear about because we don't advertise the stuff that was going to happen that you don't need to worry about. I will tell you, we have open terrorism investigations today in all 50 states, including cases right here in Arizona. We actually have, of the 25 squads in Arizona of agents, at least 6 of them are doing nothing but terrorism because it is such a real important issue. But the thing is, we pivoted, and you're going to find as a leader in business, you may have to pivot too. It's all about embracing change. You may not like what the change is. You may not care for it. You may want to still do business the old way. But as a leader, you have to message to your people. You have to make sure they understand so that they embrace change. It was important for us to change so that we can keep people safe. It's one of the reasons you haven't seen any major terrorist attacks that have been successful here on U.S. soil. We've had a few here and there, but nothing of this magnitude. It's because we embrace change and move forward. All right. In the FBI, and this takes place right here in Arizona, I drive a car that's essentially an unmarked police car. It's a regular-looking car, but it's got lights, sirens, etc. We also don't have any insurance for our vehicles because we're a government agency. We're all insured by the taxpayer dollars. I have an accident, it winds up taxpayers got to pay for it. Well, I'm sitting in the parking lot of a convenience store. A fellow agent had to run to the store and get something. And while I'm sitting in the parking lot, some guy in a big utility truck backs into my government car, causes all this damage. I get out to inspect the damage, and, I'm kind of freaking out a little bit because at the end of the day, it happened on my watch. I'm going to get held accountable. Thousands of dollars of damage that you, the taxpayer, has to pay for. And as I'm thinking about all this and getting ready to talk to the guy, he drives off. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, I've just been involved in a hit and run. And then I remember I'm a law enforcement officer and I can do something about it. So I get in my car, leaving my fellow behind, and I decide to pursue the car. I get on the radio, call the police. They pull the guy over, and we get out there, meet with the guy, talk to him. Nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. He honestly said, hey, my truck is so big, I did not even realize I hit your car. So this is not a ticket. This is what we call an FI, a field interview, where we got his information. If you want to click the next slide here, I know it's hard for you to read. Remember, this is here in Arizona. Who hit my truck? Wyatt Earp III. He is a direct descendant. Wyatt Earp didn't have children, but his brothers did. He is the great-grandson of one of the Earp brothers. And he actually goes out and does reenactments. I'm like, wow, I just had a shootout with Wyatt Earp III and survived. But nicest man around. He was so apologetic. He's like, sorry, I have insurance. I'll take care of everything. I'm like, don't worry about it. Taxpayers will pay for it. So, but this chance meeting, I ran into Wyatt Earp III. He does these reenactments. He came into the office and did a reenactment for us to talk about leadership. He was able to do fundraisers. We had people that were in financial need and did it all for free. The lesson here is everyone you meet is a potential someone. You never know who you're going to run into, literally, and how that person can benefit you in life. I got to where I am not just because I studied hard and worked, but I met a lot of people along the way. And I took the time to ingratiate myself, get to know people, not to use them, to truly befriend them. And more times than not, I was helping them, not the other way around. But I met people along the way that helped me on my path and got me to where I am today. Don't take anyone for granted. You never know who you're going to meet and how that person can help you, or even better, how you can help that person. Next slide. All right. Some of you may remember this. This is almost 10 years now. Congresswoman Giffords, one of our Congress people here in Arizona, she would do a regular event, meet your Congresswoman on a corner, and she was outside a Safeway store down in Tucson meeting people for her weekly event. Well, there was an individual who was not mentally balanced, that had a serious break with reality, psychotic. And he had focused on her for a variety of reasons and decided to target her. He showed up at this event and opened fire on her and the crowd. He wound up shooting 19 people, killing 6 of them, seriously wounding Congresswoman Giffords. I'm at home when this takes place. I get a call from Washington. It's a Saturday morning. Hey, we heard about a congresswoman being shot. What do you know? I don't know anything. I turn on CNN. They're already talking about it. From my home, I lived in Anthem at the time. Sirens down to Tucson. In less than 2 hours, I'm on scene. I spent the next 11 days down there. Agents, we always travel with a suitcase in the trunk of our car because situations like this. I'm down for 11 days as one of the bosses running the operation. We brought in over 200 agents to work this case because we didn't know what we were dealing with. Was it a lone individual? Was it a coordinated attack? Were they going to go after other politicians, et cetera? So we were, once again, going to look at everything from top to bottom. During the course of this, everybody was tasked 100% and then some. The days were incredibly long, sometimes 20-hour days. There was a moment where several days afterwards, the phone rings, my secretary answers, and she says, hey, they're going to do surgery on one of the victims that survived. They're going to remove the bullet. And we need somebody to go down there and collect the bullet as evidence. We collect every bullet, every fragment, because we examine them. If there's a different bullet, it means it came from a different gun. We might have a second shooter. We don't leave anything to guessing work. So somebody had to go down and go into the operating room and be there to collect the bullet. Not the job a boss would do, but nobody else was around. So I went down there, got suited up in surgical garb, went into the operating theater, had a plastic bag for the evidence, took the bullet, brought it back, put it into evidence. The lesson here is, for my troops, they got to see me going out and doing a job. I was leading by example. Very important as a leader. I wasn't going to send anybody to do anything I wouldn't do myself. My people saw that, hey, the boss is willing to go out and do stuff like that he wouldn't normally do. He's giving 110%. They would give 110% as well. Very important for you to try to live the words that you preach to others and lead by example. I will tell you as an aside, a couple of days after this, the woman who had had the surgery, she calls the office. My secretary tells me she's on the phone, wants to speak to the person who collected the bullet. I'm thinking, she's calling to thank the FBI for our hard work. Tragic. I couldn't be more wrong. I get on the phone with her, and she says to me, using the time-honored finders keepers rule, she wants to know why I took her bullet and when was I bringing it back. So who knows? For whatever reason, it became her security blanket. Maybe she felt, I survived this, that's my lucky charm, I want to keep it. We assured her when the case is over, we'll get it back to you. But just sort of the things you deal with as a leader that you weren't expecting. But the big issue, lead by example. Next slide. All right, you can see the picture here. Professionalism is very important. If you're going to rob a bank or anything else, you want to make sure you are applying and putting your best foot forward. If you click the slide again, it's all about the attention to detail. Okay, this guy walks into a bank, he's got this note. It's a pretty threatening note, but he's holding it upside down. When I looked at the surveillance video, you can literally see the teller trying to turn upside down to read the note. He's turning the note around simultaneously. So it's sort of like a comical game of them going back and forth, all of which is delaying his exit from the bank. Another teller realized what was going on. She pressed the alarm. Attention to detail is what his failure to do that is what got this guy arrested. You want to make sure whatever you're doing, you're putting attention into the details. The devil is always in the details. As far as bank robberies go, I will tell you, none of these guys are geniuses. I had so many bank robberies here in Arizona, I can't even count. I had a guy not far from here. He goes to a Wells Fargo branch, and he from the counter, you have the deposit slips, takes a deposit slip, and he writes on the back of the deposit slip, "This is a holdup, give me all your money." He gets nervous and he leaves the bank. He takes the deposit slip with him, gets his courage up later, goes into a different bank, not a Wells Fargo, walks up to the teller counter, presents the demand note. The teller says to him, "I need you to write this on one of our deposit slips." This guy turns around, goes to the counter, and then proceeds to write out a new demand note on one of their deposit slips. Meanwhile, she presses the alarm, the police come, he gets arrested. I had another guy who went into a bank, and there seems to be a theme here where they write these demand notes on deposit slips. He goes to the bank, writes his demand note on the back of the deposit slip, doesn't check out, goes up to the counter, presents the deposit slip with the demand note. The teller looks at it and says, "I need to see a form of ID." He produces his driver's license and slides it across. So at which point, just keeps the license. She's behind the glass, presses the alarm. He realizes what he does, runs from the bank. We just go to the address on the license later and place him in arrest. So again, what do these guys have in common? Attention to detail. Make sure you do that in your profession as leaders and you'll succeed. All right, empathy. Okay, here you can see this is a crime scene I responded to. Two police detectives, husband and wife, had received a death threat in the middle of the night in their driveway. They come out in the morning and see this. As you can see, the death threat, Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. They are chalk outlines around their potato head bodies. And the instrument of their demise was a potato masher and a potato peeler. I did not take this very seriously. I didn't think this was a big deal. But to them, it was a very big deal. Somebody knows where they live. Somebody went on their property. They did it in the middle of the night when everybody was sleeping and they have young kids. They were bothered by this and they expected the FBI to get to the bottom of it. It turns out it was somebody, one of them arrested previously. He was out of prison. He was just messing with them. He wasn't going to do anything. We found the guy. We read him the riot act. He never came back again. But I didn't consider their feelings. And as a leader, it's really important. This wasn't a big deal to me. You're going to encounter things with people that are not a big deal to you, but could be very, very important to them. And you have to have empathy for who you work with. You have to make sure you're taking the time to get to know them and understand what drives them. You can't go wrong by showing empathy and certainly being sensitive. Something I failed to do, I learned my lesson and tried to continue to do it in the future. Next slide. All right. Last story for you. This one is a story of identity theft. In this case, I'm in another bank here in Arizona. A bank robbery had happened several days before. The bank robber got away, so we interviewed everybody. We took all their statements, and 2 or 3 days later, after I've written everything up, I've gone back to the bank. I'm now going to go over the statements, make sure I got it all accurately written down. Well, while I'm in the manager's office going over her statement, the assistant manager comes in and says to me, hey, there's a guy out there trying to pass a bad check. So, not necessarily a big FBI crime, but I'm there, I'm a law enforcement officer, I have my gun, my badge. I'm gonna go talk to the guy. I go out and talk to him. Very quickly ascertain, yeah, he's passing a bad check. I hook him up, handcuffs, hold him for the local cops. What's the story here? Well, what this guy did was, he was going around and stealing mail from mailboxes. You know how like people put the flag up that there's mail outgoing? Don't do that. Criminals know that, they want to steal mail. He's looking for checks. He goes around, he finds a mailbox with the flag up, takes the mail, finds an envelope made out to APS, a utility company, so he knows there's going to be a check in there. He goes home with the check, and he gets acetone. Acetone you can get from any beauty supply place. If you put a little on a Q-tip, you can take the ink right off the paper of the check without damaging the check. So that's what these guys do. They'll take the ink off, he erased APS, he wrote in his own name. Now, all he has to do is go to a local bank. It doesn't even have to be the one the person does banking. Just as long as it's one of the same type of banks, he can go in and cash that check. He decides to go to one of the branches. I'm not going to malign any bank, so let's call him Tank of America. So this guy walks into a Tank of America branch. It's crowded. He gets online. He gets called up to a teller, and he presents the check. The teller takes the check and looks at it. It's her check. So think about the odds here. And by the way, like yourself, working part-time out as a bank. This guy goes around stealing mail at random. He picks up bags at random. Gets called up to a teller at random. Then you throw in the fact there's an FBI agent in the bank. 2 lessons here. First of all, sometimes God just wants people to go to prison. And number 2, be prepared for opportunity. I was there. I wasn't working that day other than checking statements. I still had my guns, my handcuffs, my creds. I was prepared to make an arrest. Not the biggest arrest I've ever made in my life, but years later, I'm still telling the story thanks to this person. Be prepared. You're trained now. As you go out to work world, make sure you're ready for whatever comes your way. It's never an off day. You never know when the opportunity is going to arrive. With that, folks, I will tell you, I've written a number of books. Trust me, Hawk Books, didn't even bring any with me. There's no money in books for a guy like me. You got to be a big name author. I have sold thousands of books and made hundreds of dollars. But nevertheless, if you're interested, this one is some of the stories I talked about today. It's all funny stories from the FBI, available on Amazon. I'm on campus regularly. You buy a copy, I'll be happy to sign it for you. If you buy 2 copies, I'll come to your house and read it. So please, just buy early, buy often. So, moving along, concluding in all this for today, be realistic about what you do well, what you don't do well, where you need to improve. Likewise, you also want to make sure you're not just thinking about yourself. Somebody's coming after you. You want to mentor, you want to delegate and empower, because you're not always going to be available. You got to think of the next generation of leader beyond you. Finally, you have to make a decision. You're never wrong by doing the right thing. I didn't know the answers. I always tried to do what I thought was right, and it will never fail you. With that, final slide here. This is my contact information. Here's the deal. I got nothing to sell you, folks. You ever have a question, a problem, anything, call me. Reach out free of charge. If I can help you, I'm happy to do it. I've had people on campuses reach out to me for a variety of reasons. Use me as a resource. If you're on social media, I put out a tip every single day on how to be safe, physical and cyber world. With that, folks, that's my personal thoughts on leadership. I'm sure you have your own. You've gone to a great school. Half the battle is done already. You're going to do well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be strong leaders.
Well, I think we all can agree that that was incredible. Can we give it up one more time for FBI John? Amazing. So with that, we have a really busy day ahead, and I think we all took something from John's keynote just about how to embrace challenges, things that we can do to elevate our leadership, finding a mentor, and just honestly all of the basic principles that it really takes to be a successful leader. So please, if you haven't already, make sure to scan that QR code that's in your bag. That's going to pull up the digital program for today. On page 2, you'll be able to see the schedule for the rest of the day. And then if you flip to page 7, you'll get all the information on our breakout sessions, which is what we're going to transition into now. So we have 4 breakout sessions available for you to choose from, all of which will be held in Building 5, which is like right outside the doors. So the first one is going to be Tours into Destinations with Dana Drew Shaw, and this is going to explore how visionary leadership isn't always a straight path and how we can embrace the journey along the way. And that's going to be in Classroom 5, 103. We have Leading Like a Conductor with Dr. Juan Hernandez, which will dive into leadership lessons learned by great conductors, and that's going to be in Classroom 5, 104. We also have Godly Purpose and Good Practices with Pamela Bonilla, and this will help us to discover how to find purpose in Christ, overcome adversity, pursue education, and achieve leadership. And this will be held in Classroom 5, 105. And then finally, the Social Business Leader with Brandy Labinjo will help us to cultivate overall just self-confidence and how to embrace authenticity, which will be in room 5108. So I'm going to release you guys in a second, but before we do, you guys are able to attend 2 breakout sessions. These sessions will each last 45 minutes. So you'll go to one, have 10 minutes to transition into the next one, and then after that one, we're going to break for lunch. And if you guys didn't know, our lunch today is Cane's, which we're super excited about. So with that being said, we'll have people who are helping direct you out, but you guys are free to go to your breakout sessions. Enjoy.